Let's take a look at some information and charts on Stellar for Brave New Coin. And no, your eyes do not deceive you. This is the SEC charges for Ripple. And why do we care about that for Stellar? Well, because the outcome will undoubtedly affect the Stellar price chart as well. Both of these coins have been highly correlated together, greater than 60% since 2018, near 90% from 2019 to 2020. So anything that affects Ripple will affect Stellar, and that is the biggest piece of alpha I can give you in regards to the Stellar price chart. Is watch for that Ripple news. It may be 6 months from now, maybe a year from now, but when it hits, it's going to impact the Stellar price because the two are so highly correlated. The networks are similar. Both are Jed McCaleb projects. Jed's no longer with Ripple. His main Ripple job is selling it now, and he's one of the co-founders of Stellar. Stellar has done a few things over the past few years, including burn half of their supply, half of their non-circulating supply, because they basically had trouble getting rid of it and probably saw it more of it as a liability than anything. So they still have more non-circulating than circulating, meaning there's more to be released than actually exists. So that's concerning for long-term health. On their dashboard, they list the incidents that have happened over the past few years as well. But in general, for the most part, the network is running or runs rather smoothly. They've also added DEXs and stablecoins and various other things to the network that are going to color the on-chain stats. And ultimately, though, for Ripple and Stellar, I just think a stablecoin is better than what the individual networks are able to offer. Accounts and asset holders continue to increase slightly over the past couple months, and the circulating supply keeps getting dripped out. I don't know the exact emission schedule or how that works for Ripple or Stellar anymore, because it used to be proof of stake. I'm not sure what it is now. But like I said, they still have more than 50% of the supply to be released. So it's always important to keep that in mind. And like I said, they have DEXs, they have stablecoins, they have Circle, Wire, all sorts of companies working through them and with them. They have remittances. They're kind of a more non-corporate friendly version of Ripple. At least that's my view on Stellar. Can it move the needle long term for the token? I'm not so sure. Again, it's competing with DeFi stuff, NFT stuff, yield stuff on stablecoins. It's making less and less sense to trade this for anything other than speculation. It's not to say they're not doing cool stuff, because they are, but I just don't think it's going to move the needle for the project at the end of the day. Here's the wallet. Looks like any other MetaMask type thing, right? Until it's interoperable with MetaMask or stuff like MetaMask, the utopian dream is one wallet to rule them all. One wallet to interact with every DEX, that does automatic swaps and atomic swaps, does everything for you. We're not quite there, but we're getting there. Ethereum's definitely there with MetaMask. You can just plug and play into anything in Ethereum. We're slowly getting multi-chain. If we even need to be multi-chain, we need to be multi-chain right now just because there's so much junk floating around. I think slowly over time, there'll be less of a need for multi-chain and things will begin to consolidate. But stuff like this is a step in the right direction to at least get that conversation started for stuff like Stellar or Ripple or wherever else. If we look at the on-chain stats, transaction counts have swung wildly from late 2020 to early 2021, but in general have been on the rise. This is likely due to the DEX numbers, like anything with the DEX, waves, the cred. The list goes on and on and on. That's going to show up here. So this isn't necessarily medium of exchange type stuff. This is more or less the DEX having transactions, which isn't bad. It's just you have to understand what you're looking at here, why it looks so much better than it ever has. Average transaction values have kind of been flat, and that's what you'd expect if you're seeing a lot of transactions. Most of these are probably small amounts relative to transaction sizes previously. This was the big token burn. That's going to affect NVT as well, which spiked to all-time lows during that time and is continuing to creep lower and lower and lower. Continues to look more and more bullish for everything across the board. So either NVT is the best thing to tell you to buy everything right now, or it's just a little too bullish on non-BTC stuff. Active addresses have just kind of flatlined over the past couple of years. Ever since the proof of stake stuff sort of dropped off the map, they stopped doing proof of stake. I forget when, but I think it was before the actual supply burn. And again, I don't know the emission rate or inflation, but they do a 50% to release yet. And that's active address picture isn't exactly bullish or rosy when you see that. MVRV in the green line here historically has topped out when it's reached 1, which means the market cap has been equal to on-chain activity. You can see it sort of got to 0.75 and sold off from there. So unlike Doge or BTC, LTC, ETH, kind of more in the vein with XRP, where it doesn't quite exceed its on-chain activity by very much relative to the market cap, because the market cap is already so insanely inflated with the total amount of coins that have been released. So if you're looking at MVRV for a buy signal, you're hoping to get much lower lows, certainly below 0.2, more into like the 0.1 range as far as the buy zone is concerned. Google trends for Stellar, the protocol, have declined back to basically the lows, the 2018 to 2020 lows. So not a lot of activity here recently, and never quite reached even 50% of those highs in 2017. And like every other alt that isn't DeFi, that isn't NFTs, that isn't like flavor of the month exciting stuff, it's going to have a hard time overtaking that unless there's some sort of crazy technological unlock for Stellar that isn't available on ETH or on DeFi. I just don't see that ever really coming back to these older alts unless they're doing something cool and attracting eyeballs. On technicals, this is the 1-year MA multiplier in the green. This is 5 times that in the red. Sell zone, buy zone. Very similar to XRP in that it's held its buy zone or held below that 1-year MA for an extended period of time historically. And for the most part, it's just kind of tapped above that multiplier. Even now, the multiplier wanted a bit more from Stellar. It wanted it close to $1, and it barely got to 80 cents before pulling back. So it's in the buy zone again, but it's not really like screaming a buy because historically, again, the stuff just kind of sits in here for 2 years. So the most aggressive take would be, I'm going to start buying here, just buying for the next 2 years, right? In the hopes that this does bounce eventually. But based on what this is telling you, be prepared for some pain, some extended pain for a good while. Looking at the 15 to 200 yearly pivots, VPVR and RSI, we did get a death cross a few days ago. So trend metrics aren't on your side anymore for bullishness below the 200. Back into this VPVR congestion from 2018 at 20 cents. Below that, it's probably 10 cents. It's another 50% down. This is on Polo, which has the ticker as STR, so just be aware of that. If you're newer and don't know the history of XLM versus STR, both the same token, just listed with different tickers in different places. RSI dipped into oversold, but hasn't quite put in bullish divergence just yet. So that'd be something to watch for as well if you're looking to BTFD on the USD pair. It's also sitting just above the R1 yearly pivot, and below that it's 13 cents. So if this low breaks, I like 10 to 13 cents with a bull div as far as a knife catch. On the daily cloud, it is also showing severely oversold based on the TK separation here, along with everything else in crypto. So there's a mean reversion trade to 50 cents, which is a 2x from here. Not a bad setup if it works out. And you can cheat this by looking at lower time frames like the 8-hour. And it says, okay, if we get above the cloud, or at least through the cloud, which is 32 cents, it likes price action to 50 to 53 cents. And you can see how it's been below the cloud ever since May. If it starts to perk above, then you can get more and more bullish. For me, that means adding size, adding leverage, right? Executing the trade. The trigger begins for that mean reversion trade. Right now, it's just sort of, yeah, I wouldn't short this, but this isn't exactly looking mega bullish at this point in time. STR-BTC, much like Ripple, again, is probably just going to be held at 300 to 1,000 sats kind of in perpetuity until something crazy happens. I don't really see stuff like LTC or Stellar, Ripple, any of these older alts that are still existing to necessarily outperform BTC like they have in the past, because there's more competition for spec in DeFi. There's just more attraction to that stuff than non-yielding, non-proof of stake, unexciting stuff like Stellar, Ripple, LTC. The list goes on. Cloud is telling you it's just going to be neutral probably for the rest of the year, and doesn't really have a chance until probably mid 2022 to even outperform BTC in a big way. But if you're trading this range, you're just buying lows, selling highs there. Against ETH, it's also probably like Ripple, just going to continue to break all-time lows. I don't see a world where Stellar outperforms ETH in a big way, based on development, based on DeFi stuff, news, people, sentiment. There's just not a lot of people excited about Stellar relative to ETH. And trend-wise, it's been bearish since 2019. And I don't really see that ending anytime soon. And if you look at Stellar versus XRP, you can see how tightly these are just kind of held in their current ratio. And I don't expect this to ever really change much unless the SEC goes after Ripple in a big, big way, and Ripple doesn't win that case. I think Stellar is going to initially hold that correlation price-wise. There may be some exodus from Ripple to Stellar, but at the end of the day, if the SEC goes after Ripple, they're probably going to go after Stellar for similar stuff. And they're probably going to go after a lot of projects for similar stuff. So in general, not too bullish Stellar, other than a potential mean reversion play in the near term. It probably just holds with everything else. But the party's not really happening on Stellar relative to DeFi. Lastly, I'll just mention the ETH-BTC fund and DeFi portfolio. I trade for Techemy Capital on Enzyme.finance, a non-custodial portfolio management tool. And this is just one such example of where Stellar and Ripple lose out. There's just less stuff to do with both those projects relative to DeFi. You can plug and play, like I said here. You can send ETH or USDC in this case. And you can watch what I'm doing, AUM, allocation, performance, trades. You can see that I'm plugged into Yearn Vaults, I'm plugged into Aave, I'm got Compound collateral, so I'm plugged into Compound as well. Enzyme's adding more and more yield stuff by the day, which makes it more exciting for me as the manager, because then I can decide, not only do I get into this stuff based on just the price chart, but I can watch APYs and say, okay, this is looking more and more attractive because I have access to the Yearn Vault here, because I have access to Bal, Aave, right? I can start to play those positions differently than just purely technicals and fundamentals. And I suspect SNX and 1inch and stuff like this starts to do better because of the APYs. People like me are like, okay, it might be down, it might look bearish, but these APYs are getting more and more attractive where it's just worth it to hold this stuff over USDC, which gives you 2% currently on Aave. Even if this stuff retraces a little bit more, the APYs are attractive enough where it kind of buffers that downside a little bit. So that's all I have for this one. Like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe, and happy trading.